And a lot of times people would want to hear, oh, growing up in the projects, it must have been awful. No, my life was challenging, but not awful. I mean, it's almost, I always tell the kids, it's like a really good video game. You know what I mean? You play it, and you're not going to beat it right away. You have to, and you fall, you lose it, you start back up again, and you finally get past level one, and then level two is going to be something else. But if you just hang in there, you'll learn, and you'll beat the game. And that's the way life is. You don't expect it to go. It's those, I mean, I'm going to have to cry at some point.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy, with yours truly, Michael Kahan.
Today's guest is a legend in the field, a remarkable man with potentially one of the most credits today. Ernie is tapped in and open to the beauty that this life has to offer. He's an empowering man with a contagious, positive, and forward-thinking mindset. I can't speak highly enough of him and his story. The way Ernie has navigated his life is inspiring, and how he's risen to each occasion is fascinating and mind-blowing. You'll walk out of this chat feeling something special inside. Anyway, let's get into it. Ernie Hudson is an actor, author, speaker, and executive producer. He's perhaps one of this generation's most well-versed actors. He is currently back as Winston in Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire, one of the original OGs from the classic Ghostbuster films. He currently stars in the reboot of Quantum Leap, which has recently finished season 2. He also stars and executive produces the television series The Family Business. He previously starred in the acclaimed Netflix drama series Grace and Frankie. He's also won a Satellite Award for Best Actor in a Series for his performance in Oz. Some of his other television credits include Modern Family, The Secret Life of the American Teenager, Law and Order, LA's Finest, Twin Peaks, Scandle, Blue Bloods, Grey's Anatomy, and Ballers. Some of his film credits include all 5 of the Ghostbuster movies, The Crow, Miss Congeniality 1 and 2, The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, Congo, Champions, Retirement Plan, as well as Prisoner's Daughter. So as you can imagine, we dive deep and we cover a lot, and we chat about life-changing fights, the crazy story behind how he got Ghostbusters, moving beyond adversity, horrible agents, fork in the road moments, happiness, beautiful story of how he got his acting scholarship, his grandmother, and plenty more. Before we get into this chat, in case you aren't aware, the videos are now available on YouTube under Michael Kahan. That's Kahan with a K, unless you're listening to it already. I'll still be posting snippets of these chats on Instagram under Funny and Failure, so check them out if you want to stay in the loop for upcoming episodes, or you want to ask a guest a question. I'd also love it if you would share the podcast or share your takeaways from the chat. It really motivates me, helps the podcast grow, and ensures I can lock in amazing guests like this one. And just as a final reminder, the podcast comes out every Monday at 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, with the video to follow the following day. Anyway, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's epic episode. I'm going to take you down memory lane.
Okay.
You had a life-changing fight many years ago, and it led you to driving in a car and discovering something that had changed your life. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, probably talking about, my first marriage. My big argument with my wife, who was an amazing lady, but we were kids. We got married at 18 and 16 and really shouldn't have been even thinking about that. But where I come from, back in those days, people did that. And
Oh, no, I'm not doing like a gotcha and there was a fight. It's just what
Right.
this fight led to.
Right, yeah. So the fight basically led to me, I had to get out of the house. I just could not stand to be there 1 minute longer. So I got in my car and I drove around with no destination in mind, and just happened to be driving by a street where there was a lineup of people going around the block. And I just out of curiosity, it wasn't like a movie theater. It had a little marquee, but I wasn't sure what it was. And so I parked the car and asked what was going on. And they said it was a play. And I'd never been to a professional play. So I got in line and thought, anything, to keep me from going home. And sat down, the lights came up and I found myself crying and
Oh, wow.
just totally moved by. I just thought it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen in my life. And just so powerful. And the actors were bigger than life. And it was, I remember just sitting there, the audience cleared out. And then the actors had sort of they were kind of coming out. And I was almost too awkward to even say something to them. And then I thought, man, if I could do that, because I tried a lot of jobs over my life, and I never found anything that I felt at home with. But I thought to be able to do that, that would be a dream. So a lot of people think I want to become an actor out of watching movies or TV. I never even thought that was possible. But it was seeing that play that sort of lit the spark.
Isn't it wild? And this is not a comment on your ex-wife whatsoever. It's amazing how through a very stressful moment that you find something that changes your life. No one ever talks about how a fight can be a good thing. And you just happen to see a line, you go in there, you're probably not in the best headspace, and then your life probably changes like that.
Right, yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, it is. Life is like that. I think sometimes if we open ourselves, sometimes you open yourself by not focusing on the thing you need most. Because you're more focused over here, you leave yourself open to other possibilities. I didn't expect it, not at all. I figured I'd sit there for a little bit, check it out, leave, and it just went. Now it was so amazing, I couldn't even ask for that. I mean, it was like too big of a dream.
Oh.
And then that semester, the fall semester in college, I took an acting class as an elective, and that same wife suggested that I take the class. And when I walked on stage, I knew I got this.
It's so brilliant to hear, because there's so many people, and I know you alluded to, I've just written down a few things. You had many jobs. I think you tried for the army, but you had asthma, you worked as a janitor, a machine operator, you worked many other jobs that wasn't quite your fit. And then you find something and you're like, you know what, I can actually do this and I'm good. I'm sure that would have also changed your view of self and maybe your confidence.
Yeah. I think that, I know that I'm good. I know I'm meant to do something. I grew up believing in God and the possibilities that you could ask, but what do you ask for? We know the things we don't want, but how do we find those things that we really, really want, that we're willing to sacrifice for? And to me, that was home. I believe people say, well, it's wonderful that you found something that you love. I said, what I found was something I really knew in my heart that I could do. That I could do this. I think if I'd been able to build tables, and I really felt good at it, that would have been okay. But I just didn't find anything that I felt at home with.
So did you get this confidence? You talk about finding it home. Did you feel better about yourself? Because I've had many jobs that I didn't like and I didn't want to do for a while, and I changed, and I felt a little bit inside, a little bit of shame. I'm not saying that you did.
Right,
and then when I found, this and like screenwriting and got into the creative art, I used to be an accountant.
Right.
I felt all these negative emotions. And now that I'm doing this, I'm not saying I've arrived or anything. I'm like, you know what? I can live a much better life. And I feel so much better about myself.
Yeah. And I think that is the arrival. I think, where we go from here, it's a journey, it's an adventure. After working in the business over 50 years, suddenly I put on a black t-shirt and it goes viral on the internet.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that.
It's like, really? But I think that is the moment when you find that, that space where you say, this is me. And also there was, I'm so determined to be good at it that I love seeing people who I'm impressed with because it gives me something to sort of aspire to. And I always felt like I can do that. I can do it better. I can do it. So it's always been a growing thing. It's never been like I've reached the top and that's it. It's always like, I can dig a little deeper. I can find some other meaning. I can, it's always room to sort of grow. And I love it for that reason.
I love that mentality. It's what inspires me. This is why I love speaking to people like you. It's all about like growth and learning. I think it's contagious and it's what we need. But it also, you have a crazy empowering story in that it wasn't always easy, especially at the time. You're going to fill in the gaps for me, but I think you're a single father of two. Even before that, your grandmother raised you. You didn't know your parents. And the courage to pursue something where there's no, inverted commas, money in it, you don't know what's going to happen, that can be very scary. And you've got two kids. So where did that where did that like drive come from to realize, you know what, I'm going to be okay?
Well, I think when I found it, I was determined that, this is going to be my space. But then to my surprise, when the marriage really failed, and I didn't get it until she made it clear to me that it was over. And then it's like, oh, okay. So, but I thought, okay, well, if it's over, so I'll just go my way. But she's like, no, I'm not taking the kids. She was working on her career. So you got to take the kids. And I'm like, I never heard of that. Wait a minute, what do you mean? I got to take the kids. It's like, no, that's, but then not having had a father, it was important for me that I accept that responsibility. I mean, I never wanted someone I wouldn't want to do to my kids what someone had done to me. The times I needed someone, there was no one there. So I was determined to be the best dad in a strange way. I think it was the biggest motivation because I believe so strongly that it's possible. And I wanted to demonstrate to my sons that it is possible. You may not have the same dream I had, but I'm going to show you that there is a God, there is a universe that will work on our behalf. And I don't know how I'm going to get there. I don't know anybody. I don't have any money. We came out with, on zero, but one way or the other, it will unfold and we'll get there. And there are times when, and the kids will, a lot of times they rally me on. I'd come back from an audition I really, really wanted, and it could mean all the difference, and I didn't get it. And they would say, Dad, just sit down, and, bring me some water and say, Dad, what's wrong? And I'd say, I went up and it didn't work out. And they said, Dad, take a deep breath. It's going to be all right. You always told us it's going to be okay, right? And don't worry, something better's going to, it kind of reversed. I didn't understand, and I still don't understand the whole father-child relationship because I didn't have someone to set an example for me. But, and they raised me as much as I'm sure I raised them. But they were always the reason that I could dig deeper. When your son or your kid says to you, I remember my son wanted his bike, and it was a picture in a magazine. And I remember I said to him, I said, listen, things are a little tight right now, and I don't know what's going to happen. So maybe later on I'll, and he said, Dad, it's okay. He said, it's all right. Now you got to get the bike, It's like,
especially like that, yeah.
I got to get the bike. So I would go into audition, and they would say, Ernie, thank you, but if I knew I hadn't connected, I'm like, no. We're going to do this again. I'm not leaving until you get who I am and what I bring to this project. And I think had I not had kids, maybe, and there were a lot of things having kids. I had friends who would, leave the set and party or go out, and I had to get home to the kids, I remember I started smoking marijuana, and my kids found a little stash, and they dumped it in the toilet. And I went like, what? And they said, Dad, but you said you didn't want us to do anything like that. So then why would you do it? And then you have to go, yeah, I guess,
It's a whole bag.
So there you go. So I think they were, yeah, they sort of kept me. It was easy to focus on what I had to do, I think, because of the kids. And I didn't want to say, in America, we talk a lot about the American dream and anything is possible. And I don't like hearing that talk. I mean, is it real or is it not real? I had a friend who was really talented. We went to high school together. And when I went to Detroit, I stayed at his place for a minute. And Percy wanted for his kids, so he worked a job and he wanted them to go to college. Mm. He ended up dying very young, but and I don't think his kids actually ever did went to college. But I knew that if I wanted my kids to go to college, I had to go to college. You know what I mean? The best thing you can give to your child is an example, not all the words you say, but the example that you set for them. So
I think it's so, because a lot of people go the other way. And you mentioned how like your father wasn't around, your ex-wife left, in that moment. A huge credit to you breaking the cycle. You're being like, this happened to me. I don't want it to happen. That's the hardest thing ever. And I'm not comparing, like you see it with alcoholic parents, and it breeds between the lines.
Right.
And despite all of that, you like, I love my kids. I'm going to be there for them. And you went up and beyond. Right. When people are stressed, you don't see clearly. I'm surprised you even got work. And I say that in the sense of when you're like desperate and stressed and you've got kids to feed, people can generally sense it. But, you obviously did something where you're like, I'm still going to go in, honor my craft, be grounded and present, and you let go. Was there like a mindset shift you had to do?
Yeah, I think it's, there's I'm going to apologize because I can't pull the verse and all that. But there's a story in the Bible about these brides who are waiting for the groom, and nobody knows what time he's going to come. And so they have to be prepared. So whenever he arrives, and he will take them, whatever. So I don't know how many there were, but several of them fell asleep, and some they didn't, they weren't together. But the one had her lamps ready. She was prepared. She was waiting. She was, and so when the groom came, and so I've always felt that the universe will work in my behalf, but I have to be prepared. So I would really over prepare. I knew that I had one moment, and sometimes you can be so desperate, like you say, you can go in and just blow it because you got so much riding on. And my auditions had nothing to do with the performance in the show. None. And a lot of directors and producers, they want to see, the stress you get in an audition, has nothing to do with what you're going to do when the movie comes out. Yeah. But I think preparation helps you to avoid those little nervous mistakes because you know the material. You've been down that road so many times. You're prepared for that moment. And so I never like being unprepared. Even now, I don't go to a set trying to figure it out. Yeah. I go to the set. I'm ready to play because I'm ready. I'm ready to dance. And when I get on the set and I have with actors who are just now becoming familiar with the material, or they didn't study, they stayed out, and they're not prepared, it's a little bit. I mean, I never say anything, but in my mind, I'm going, really.
That's wild.
This is what we do. You don't come. I mean, it's so. I think that, and I really believed that I was the best at what I did. Now, I'm not sure if anybody agreed with me, but I believe.
Yeah. For you mentally.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. You've got a strong work ethic. And then you mentioned college, and I don't know if you went to 2 colleges or you went to Yale and you got a scholarship. And then you mentioned you wanted to be a role model to your kids. So was it Yale where you were like, I'm going to go to uni, college? I know you guys call it college, and work on. I think you were doing writing. Did you go in for writing?
Yeah. I was considered myself a playwright. I think I was always a little embarrassed to be an actor. Some like actors were. I don't know. When I first got involved in theater, I was with a group called Concept East Theater, and you could write stuff and they put it on.
Oh, nice.
But if you wrote a show and the actors didn't show up, then you might have to run lights. If the actor didn't show up, you might have to go out and do the role. You had to do, it was community theater. And so what I knew was I had to study and prepare for a long run. Since this was my mission, my purpose, then I knew that I had to over prepare. So college was absolutely necessary. And I went to Wayne State in Detroit, where I got my degree. I got a scholarship to Yale. I went there for a year. And then
can I add to that? Sorry for interjecting.
Yeah, sure.
I think you got a scholarship and you were number 7, and they only usually accept 6 people. So that would have also potentially been a bit of a sign that you're.
Yeah, the program was filled. I mean, the program was filled, and I applied. And on top of that, I applied 20 days after the deadline.
I didn't know that.
So it was, and I got the notice that, apply again next year. I sent some plays that I'd written. I kind of put this whole package together. But my ex-wife was working on her master's degree at the University of Michigan, and she's pretty incredible. She went from basically the 9th grade, because she had polio as a kid, to getting her eventually getting a PhD. But she was working on a master's at that time, and she had there was a librarian conference in Pittsburgh, and we were in Detroit. Now Yale is in New Haven, Connecticut, which is nowhere near Pittsburgh, but it's a little ways. So the guy who was head of admissions at Yale, I sent a letter, and then I called and said I was going to be in New Haven, which I wasn't, but I was going to be in New Haven. We were going to Pittsburgh, and could I have a meeting with him? And I knew that all the positions were filled, but if I would just like to talk to him and get his advice. And if he could just share with me just, how I could. So he gave me this appointment for that Monday morning, and she finished her conference on Sunday, and we drove. It was quite a drive. We drove from
I can imagine.
Pennsylvania to New Haven, Connecticut, checked into a hotel, got the next morning, went to the meeting. We had a little Volkswagen, so we had all the luggage and stuff. My wife and the kids were in the car. We found a parking space right in front of his offices in the admissions, and parked the car. I went in, and I was having this meeting, and he had read my plays. He liked my plays. Was very complimentary. He said, but the program had been filled up. If I would apply again next year, and I said, but you'll understand, this is so important to me. And I just said, I was sort of laying on, and he really got annoyed with me. I could just feel this. So he kind of turned away from me, and he walked over to the window, and he looked outside, and my kids had gotten out of the car, and they were playing on the lawn.
No way.
And he said, is that your family? And I said, yes, sir. And that's how important it is for me to go to Yale. I mean, this is not, this is life-changing, not just for me, but also for my family. And he said, you drove all the way here? And I said, yeah, because this is Yale. And so he was just puzzled after that. So we got in the car and we drove back to Detroit. And as I was walking in the house in Detroit, the phone was ringing, and it was Yale saying that I had been accepted.
Wow.
I don't know if that could happen.
Nor did I.
Sometimes there's I always tell my kids, there's a story in the Bible about Moses leading the children of Israel, and they were running from Pharaoh and his army, and they got to the Red Sea, and the waters parted, and they crossed. And when the army came, the sea swallowed them up. It closed back up again. But there are 2 versions of it in the Bible, but one where they get to the Red Sea and they have to step into the water. They get into the water, and then the waters part. And my grandmother would always say, you have to take that step. You have to you have to go into that unknown. You know, you have to, if you're standing on the shore waiting for the waters to part, it'll never happen. You know,
Right.
you have to step out there and say, yeah, you know, and trust God. And that's what, I mean, that's my life. I mean, it's been pretty much that. And it's never failed me. You know, you know, and the opportunities have always come from people and places that I least expected. The people who owed it to me, who I felt I should have helped me, the people who I'd loaned money to, and it never came through. There's always someone over there who I didn't know, and suddenly it's like, oh, you know, that's, you know, when I was, when I got the Ghostbusters, I went in for a television series called Ryan's 4 on ABC Network. Audition, and it was about 4 doctors. One of them a black doctor. This is back in the
yes, I wouldn't be on screen.
when it was very few, you know, people of color on television, period. But it was a part there, and I wanted this role. I studied for this role, and I knew I was right for them. Now, at the same time, I went in for a movie called Adventures in the Creep Zone. That didn't really mean a lot, but I auditioned for it. So I went in. The people on Ryan's 4 loved me, but Henry Winkler, who I know now, but Henry was one of the, I didn't know him then. He was one of the executive producers, and he wasn't convinced. So they wanted me to come back again. So I just went in. I'm going to nail this thing. It's so important to my kids, and my life's going to change. And I got to get there. And just before they called me into the meeting, Henry Winkler is leaving.
Oh, that's brutal.
So I'm like, he was the one I had to convince, and he's leaving. So I went in and I did the thing, and they all seemed. But then when I got home, I found out that they went with someone else, and I was just devastated. You know, I thought, man. And then my agent said, "Well, you did get Ryan's 4, but I have good news. You got Adventures in the Creep Zone, and it's a film." And I'm like, "Adventures in the Creep Zone? Are you kidding me?" Well, Adventures in the Creep Zone was a movie being done by a guy named Jean LaFleur, and Columbia was doing it. Peter Strauss was starring in it. Molly Ringwald was in it, and we were shooting it in Utah and Canada. The point being, we did that movie. They changed the title. First off, they fired the writer, producer, director. I didn't know you could do that.
Yes.
Uh,
Uh,
But they replaced him with Lamont Johnson. And we finished the movie. They changed the name to Space Hunter. And Ivan was the executive producer. Harold Ramis was one of the writers. And then a year later, when Ghostbusters came out, I knew them, even though they felt that I was all wrong for the part in Ghostbusters because it was different than Space Hunter. But the point is, when I lost Ryan 4, to me, that was this. But this other thing that I didn't think was Adventures in the Creep Zone, I mean, that turned out to be the thing that led to Ghostbusters, that led to a lot of other things. So we never know
what's next.
and we shouldn't try to think we're clever enough to figure it out, that we're so smart. So when people say they appreciate all my choices, I'm going, I don't know how much I had to do with all that because
but you're a willing participant in life and open to life.
Willing and open and receptive. And I know that I don't know. The other important thing for me that I've always from my grandmother's teaching is the Bible says you take one step and he will take two. It's important to take that one step. Sometimes we get so clever. One of my sons who's so smart, but he thinks he knows.
Yep, that's the role of a son.
But you just have to take that one. We sometimes want to
do 3, and then we want the universe to help out.
Yep.
We're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to, you just have to, that stepping out on faith, and then the universe begins to open up. So if there's something you want to do, but you have to take action. You have to take that step. And,
No, I agree with you fully, and there's so many examples you've given, but even, driving all the way to college, that many hours, and you knew that you couldn't go to, or you didn't think you could go to the college,
right.
And you asked the question, and then, something happened. And I think that's been a theme in your life, because we've spoken about some of the challenges. I know that we'll talk about Ghostbusters in a sec, but there's so many challenges, but we've got limited time. But there was a real fork in the road moment where, I think an agent said to you, you would never work in Hollywood, and you were at a low point in your life. I think you're living with your brother. Your sister-in-law went to take your clothes to the laundromat and left your clothes. You had nothing. I think you had an audition. And to go through those moments and still, have this awareness that, life can provide something better for you, rare trait.
Right. Yeah. I think that, I think it's, a lot of people talk about believing in God or believing in the universe or believing in, but they're afraid. And I go, well, we have our moments of doubt. We all, but if you really believe, does it work or doesn't work? If it doesn't work, then what are we talking about? But if it works, and it's always sort of worked, and, because, there's no sort of going back. I mean, it's moving forward.
Yep.
And yet I always knew that, or one of the teachings that I keep referring to my grandmother, because I think everything I do is somewhat connected to her.
Of course, she was
But she says it only works if you're not out wishing bad things for other people. If you're not out, you can't be out trying to get revenge or take advantage or whatever. You've got to be coming from a good place in order to hear that guidance that is there. And I'm not talking about joining anybody's. I'm not a religious guy, so I'm not talking about joining anybody's anything. But in your heart, there's a part of us that sort of knows. And there are times when it's like there is no answer, but I know there is.
Inner knowing. I always talk about intuition, because I come from the meditation side, which is something that I do, and we all have an inner guidance. Whether you're religious or not, it doesn't really matter. We know whether we should go to that party, whether we should do that job, and sometimes fear comes in, and it's a superpower. We all have it. Some people are more tapped in than others.
Yeah.
But it's so brilliant, and you've obviously been quite aware of it, and your grandmother, who's a huge inspiration, told you that it was actually a thing, so you could recognize it. So that's really awesome of her. Yeah.
I think and a lot of it is just common sense too. A lot of people turn it off because sometimes we want to do things that we really don't want to hear that voice. We want to just
the ego. Things.
And but it's man.
Let's go back to this fork in the road moments where this agent said you never work in Hollywood.
Right.
That would have been horrible to hear. You're going through a bit of financial troubles. You're living with your brother. It's a tough time. What was going on? And I think you got an audition afterwards. Something changed to kind of flip the switch.
Yeah. I mean, I was doing a play for no money, and I was trying to get an agent. It was just, and I was staying at my brother's house. I was sleeping. It was just really not a great time. And my as you mentioned, my sister-in-law left my clothes at the laundromat, so I had no clothes. I got this. I met a guy named Michael Constantine, who had a television show called Room 222. I didn't even know him. I saw him at a party, and I just went up to him and say, "Hi, I'm an actor, and I'm from Detroit, and you have an agent, right?" And he said, "Yeah, I have an agent." I said, "Wow, would you introduce me to your agent?" And he said, "Sure." I mean, because really, who does that? But he said, "Yeah, I'll do that," and he did. He called his agent, and the agent agreed to see me. So I had to meet this agent in Beverly Hills, which is like I hadn't really spent time in Beverly Hills. But my brother had a jean outfit. It was like green jeans, and a green jean jacket, which is really kind of cool. But I wanted to wear that to the audition. But he had worn it. He got up and he had wore it. So he was coming home. So I had to wait for him to come home with it. So I put on now my brother's about 40 pounds lighter than I am weight-wise. So our clothes don't exactly fit the same. But I put on the clothes, still warm, got in his old car. He had 2 cars, but the really older car.
Yeah.
And drove to Beverly Hills, which I really didn't know a lot about, parked the car, went in to see this agent, and as you mentioned, he was less than kind. And when he looked like when he said that, he said, I don't care where you're from, just go back to Detroit, wherever you come from. You're never going to work here in Hollywood. He said, the only reason I'm seeing you is because Michael Constantine is, a friend and my best client, and I'm seeing you because he asked me to. Now I've seen you, so you can leave.
Jeez.
And I was so kind of crushed by it because I've been trying so hard. I've been really trying. And my ex-wife was in Minnesota yelling at me because I was a lousy dad and all this stuff. Mm. So I thought I had to salvage this. So I took up my picture and resume and I said, "Is it? Can I leave this with you? And if something comes open, maybe you can." He said, "What am I going to do with that shit?" He said, "I get that in the mail all the time." He said, He said, "No, I don't want it." And then he held up his trash can, and it was filled with envelopes where people had sent.
Wow.
And so he said, "No." And then he turned his back, then dismissed me. Now I got to walk all the way across the room to the door.
What a douche. And
I walked out of the office, and I'm going to be really honest here. I just had a meltdown.
Of course.
When I think about it now, I could almost, because I was just devastated. I mean, so I cried, and then I pulled myself together, and I walked to the car. I got in the car, drove up to the booth, which in those days, he said it was going to be it was like 75-cent parking. I didn't have 75 cents. I didn't have any money. But nobody charged for parking, so I didn't think that I had to pay for parking. Mm-hmm. And I said, I don't have the 75 cent or dollar or whatever it was. And he said, "Well, why would you park here if you didn't have any money?" And I said, "Well, I didn't know." And he said, "Man, just get the hell out of here." And when he said that, I just lost it again. I just lost it. And so I couldn't go home. I couldn't go home and see my sister-in-law. And I got a phone number of a girl at the same party that Michael Constantine was at. And I went to that party because one of the guys in the play I was doing was Michael's brother-in-law. But at that party, I met a girl named Tony, and she gave me her number, and I just couldn't go home. So I called Tony and went by her house, and she said, "Oh, just come over," and we drank something, gin, scotch, I don't even know. I'm not a drinker, but yeah. Finally I went home. And then a day later, 2 days later, I was I get a call, and it's Paramount Studios, and they want to see me doing this movie called Lead Belly, and Gordon Parks wants to see me. And I'm like, "And how fast can you get here?" And I'm like, I can be there. And now in reality, it's about a 25-minute drive. I didn't have a car, but so I'll be there in 15 minutes. So I jumped up, and I'm scrambling. I ran to the guy who was directing the play I was doing, just grabbed his keys, took his car, drove to Paramount. Now, what I didn't know was the girl, Tony, was Gordon Parks' daughter. I didn't know who she was. And the photo that I tried to leave with the agent that was clutching in my hand, when I went to her place, I laid it on the top of the piano. That night, Gordon Parks came to dinner and saw my photo and resume, and he's doing this movie called Lead Belly, Roger Mosley is playing the lead, but they need somebody a nemesis for in the beginning of the film that and he saw that, went to Yale, and so that's how they called me. I didn't know how he would do that, and that's how I got Leavenworth. I mean,
that is remarkable, and thank you for your honesty, because I can only imagine how I would feel to go through that. You have the biggest piece of shit of an agent. He could have just said no. He didn't need to do all that. You're at a place where you didn't want to be in your life. You mentioned a few things, and then just that moment where yes, you made me very inspired. He just happens to see a photo, it changes your life. Do you reflect on that moment? Because that was a real low point in life, not where you wanted to be.
No, that and at times when it feels like that, I just know that it reassures you of your faith. That I know there's an answer. Sometimes I go, I don't know what the answer is. I know there's an answer, and I know it'll be revealed. There was a thing they used to say in church: it may not happen when you want it, but it's right on time. And so I just kind of trusted, because there were times when I just could not see beyond, and yet somehow, I remember going to that audition, and Gordon Parks, Gordon Parks had directed, I think, Shaft at that time. They did a movie called Sounder. He's internationally famous photographer for, I think, Look magazine, and so he was, this is Gordon Parks. So I went into the meeting, and he sort of explains what they're doing, and he says, this part is he says, there's a big dance that takes place, and I need, the dance is really elaborate. You need to be able to dance. He says, now, are you a dancer? And I said, oh yeah, I can dance. And he kind of looked at me and says, there's another part where coming to the dance, he has to drive a team of horses. And it's important for someone to be comfortable around horses. Did you grow up? Do you know horses? Are you comfortable? And I said, oh I can drive horses. Oh. But then I was lying, and then so I said, he says, okay, so wait in the hallway. And I got up to walk out, and I got to the door, and so I said, Mr. Parks, about that dancing, I'm not a dancer, but I can learn a dance. And he said, what about the horses? Do you at least know something about horses? I said, well, and not really, but I could, so, but he gave me the job anyway, so we shot it.
Maybe it was the
and that's why I didn't go back to Yale, because it was starting in September, and Yale was starting up in September, and then I had to make the choice: do I go back to college and study this stuff, or do I do what it is that I want to do? And I had this amazing time. We shot it in Austin, Texas. It was just an amazing movie.
I reckon your honesty played a part, along with obviously, doing the role well, but I like the honesty. You're also talking about like fighting for roles and how things, I love the kind of the contrast of how, despite when things have been so tough, mentally haven't been able to see things, you've still been able to move forward. 99 out of 100 people would give up and do something else. It's such a rare trait. It's very inspiring. But I also know with Ghostbusters that although you knew Ivan, he wouldn't actually let you see the role, and you had to fight hard for that role. And I think it's go on.
No, I first heard of we did Space Hunter, and I saw Ivan. We did Space Hunter, and it came out that spring of the next year. I saw Ivan on an elevator at a house just by accident, and I said, "Oh, hi, how you doing?" That kind of, and on the ride down for something, he says, "Oh yeah, I'm doing a movie with Billy and Danny." I don't know who Billy and Danny is. And he said, "But there's nothing in it for you." And I said, "Oh, okay, well,
it's a strange
good
thing
luck
to
with
say.
that. That's fine." And then I found out that there was a role for a Black character. And my agent, I tried to get her, they won't see me because they felt I was all wrong for the part. So for about 2 months, I couldn't get an audition. Everybody I knew, even my Hispanic friends, were going in for this part, but they just would not see me. And finally, I got an audition. They sent me the script, and I thought, man, this script was just blew me away. I thought, if I get this part, I mean, this is going to change my life. My sons, you know, they read the script. They would help me work on, you know, and we worked on it. And I went in audition, and man, I just nailed it. I mean, I was just, you know, you dig deep, and I just knew I had it. And then I came home and they said, well, they liked you, but they want you to come back again for a screen test.
Yeah.
So I dug deep and I went in again, and I thought I nailed it. And they said, well, they like you, but, you know, they're seeing some other people and they'll get back to you. And then about 2 weeks later, they like you to come in for a screen test. I'm like, well, didn't we just have okay, so I go back in and say, it just went on that way for a long time. By the time I got the role, I was like, I couldn't even celebrate. I'm like, okay, this has been too much of a, you know, but it worked out, you know.
And last question on that. What's it like knowing, because I know that you were cut out from the first two, you had a major role just in general and they cut a lot out. What's it like to see with the latest movie, to see how you kind of like all rounded and you kind of get it close to the arc?
Yeah, I think, and I have to give Jason Reitman credit, because Jason was actually in the second movie in the party scene, and in the first, he was always around the set, so I knew him as he was about 6 years old, as a little kid, and I just really I love him. He's just an amazing guy and very talented. So and I think he sort of saw the character the way I saw the character. And I've been, you know, we became good friends toward the end of his life, but I think the studio, you know, it's a different story. Sony's very different now. I've had meetings with them. We've discussed things, and I'm glad they listened to me and heard my issues. And I'm not, you know, angry about what happened 40 years ago. You know, you never know why people make choices, which is why it's sometimes easier to get through things when you don't feel you can judge it, when you think you know what's going on. But truth of the matter is, people make choices. But I think they allow the characters to sort of grow and develop. And I'm glad I'm not playing a guy looking for a steady paycheck at this stage. So I'm very, very happy about that. And I'm really appreciative of Jason and Gil and Sony for letting Winston sort of have his own arc.
And it was great. I just saw the latest movie. It was fantastic. We're now going to do a quick rapid fire segment to wrap up the podcast. So the first thing that springs to mind, but you can take your time. We've already alluded to this, but see how we go. What's been your special ingredient to work all these years?
I think just remembering why I do it, and finding the joy, the love of it, and also realizing I've never quite gotten it right. So I'm always trying to get to that perfect place. And I've never had the character. I've never gotten a role that I felt like that defines me. I've done a lot of different roles, but Jamie Foxx, when he got the movie Ray, that movie was perfect. I haven't had a role like that, and I'm still looking for that.
I like that, because then you're still excited and inspired.
Yeah.
What's the best part? I know that you can say a lot of things, but what's the best part of being a part of the Ghostbusters franchise? One thing that springs to mind.
The best part is the fans and hearing their stories and how special this movie has been to them and how it's made such a difference in their lives, how they've connected with it for 40 years and how they've introduced it to their children and grandchildren and shared it together. That is truly, truly special.
What are you most proud of?
I think I'm most proud of my kids, you know, my relationship with my wife, my relationship with life, and knowing that it's not a forever, journey, and I'm so thankful to. It'll sound very egotistical, but I'm very thankful to be me. You know, I love me. You know, so I can't imagine. I never wanted to be anybody else. So I've been very blessed.
I love that. That's a winning mindset because we need to love ourselves. I know it's a lot easier said than done. Brilliant. Any advice you want to give to people who want to try something different or new, but perhaps a bit fearful of doing so?
Yeah, just trust that voice, that inner voice, that guide that we all have. And, just know that it's possible, but just know if you just do what you know, don't feel like you have to know everything. You don't have to have all the answers. You just got to have that little bit, and it expands. And the more you step into it, the more it'll open up to you. But trust yourself.
And the last question before I ask how people can follow you and keep up to date with you, what is the one question I should have asked you?
The one question is maybe how do we make peace with the realization that this is not a forever journey?
And what's your answer to that?
Love. And love is forever. So
that's the key. Awesome. Before we go, how can people follow you, keep up to date with you, and all of that cool stuff?
Yeah, I think the social media stuff, Ernie Hudson Official, on Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff. So I think it's all the same. But that's probably the best way.
And I think you're also in Cameo. Am I correct?
Oh yeah, Cameo. Yeah, Cameo. I love doing cameos. For me, I love the connection with people. It's I take it very serious. It's just a wonderful medium. And I'm so thankful to be on. I've been on for a couple of years now, and I love it. I love doing it, and it's very, very special.
I like that. All of those will be in the episode notes below so people can check you out. Thank you so much. I love your mindset on life. You're a very positive, empowering guy, and it's captivating and inspiring. And yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for taking the time. Good luck with everything. Really.
Thank you.
I love Ernie's open to life attitude. To simplify, he explains the game of life as sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, sometimes it's not fun or frustrating, but we keep trying and eventually we level up and things get better. One of the things we can learn from Ernie is that we can learn and grow from everything we experience in life. It is easy to sit in a self-pitied mindset and focus on the negative aspects, but Ernie reminds us that love is always present, that there is always positive learnings from every situation, no matter how grim they may appear to be. So I'll leave you with this epic quote. Let go of the idea of winning or losing. In the game of life, the most important thing is just showing up and doing your best. Dominique Bertolucci. Thank you for listening to the Funny and Failure podcast, exploring the deeper side of comedy.